Coach, I will say this, I have my phone with me, and if I get the right call, I will leave you, because this is a different day and age with a lot of things happening, just getting additional information today. So it's just a time in college football that we've never seen before, but the thing that really struck my heart today, I told our staff earlier today that, as long as I've been in it, even before I became a head coach, this was kind of the in a certain way, in the recruiting world, this is kind of the new calendar year, right? You have this class. It used to be in February when this usually happened. Now we moved it to December, which I think makes a lot of sense. I do think there's some discussions out there to move it up even earlier might make even more sense for a lot of people involved. But this day is special for the kids that just signed, for these 19 players, 16 high school kids and 3 junior college players. All 3 of those junior college players are also high school qualifiers, so I think it's really important that we continue to look for the right type of person to fit into our program, and couldn't be more excited. A couple highlights. I thought Bret always does a great job of bringing things to light, and to have 3 signing classes in a row that have ranked among the best in Illinois history since they've been taking them. Notoriety of this is pretty special. It's a really big day at certain positions, especially. I knew from the departure where we're at and where we could be a year from now. We kind of try to always be ahead of the calendar. It was going to be big in certain areas. 6 guys that were 4-star guys. I really don't get into rankings. Anybody that knows my career, my history, but I do note that at certain times when players are ranked in a certain way, it gets the fan base and everybody else excited. To me, they're all 5 stars when they come in here. We're going to treat them like they're the best they've ever been and try to get them to a place they've never been before. But we continued in the state of Illinois, probably more than ever, been on the top players in the state. I knew taking this job we weren't going to get all of them, but we were going to take a swing at all of them, and definitely did that. Even the guys that we didn't get, some of them went to Big Ten, some of them went across the country. I think we built relationships with them, so even if they don't come with us today, what we're kind of finding out through this recruiting process in the portal world, how you treat them now may come back to help you 2 to 3 years from now. So we've always taken the high road, wish guys that we pursued the best. Kind of with that being said, there's not a number of guys across the country that we recruited that maybe they didn't sign with us today, but it was a pleasure and honor to get to know them and their families, and our door is always open as things unfold in the future. But these 19 guys, highlighted with Brandon Hanson, who was our first commit. He was kind of the old way of doing things. Ironically, I believe he's the only player of the 19 guys that we signed after we offered from a high school camp. We brought him on camp going into his junior year. If I remember right, Bart, weren't they coming out of vacation? They were coming out of vacation, and his mom drove him here, like literally from the airport. We were in a home visit just a couple weeks ago, and we talked about how that day they were delayed, and they weren't sure they're going to make their connection. They weren't sure they're going to make their camp, and they ended up making it. Got here after he performed for us. We offered him a scholarship before anybody else. He was the first commit to us, and on top of that, I think he's a guy that probably I think a lot of these guys are probably from the outside world going to be underrated. He's a guy that literally turned down teams that are in the playoffs this year that came in and tried to recruit him, and he shunned them away because of his love for the University of Illinois. I was on the game field after the Northwestern game, probably about as low as I've been, right, all year, and he literally came up and grabbed me with a couple of the other recruits and said, "Coach, this is where we're going to go," and said a few things to my ear that kind of changed even my perspective on that day, right? So just really feel good, not just what kind of players we're getting, but the kind of people we're getting. On offense, I know to add a quarterback in every class is very important. To get Trey Petty to sign with us this year. Another guy Barry sought out a long time ago. Obviously, there was a connection with Starkville High School with Luke and all that pertains, but I remember the high school coach Coach Jones speaking very highly of him, and kind of said to me when I called him, he said, "Hey, you like Luke?" I said, "Yeah, I like Luke." He said, "Well, you're going to really love this guy," right? Just the way he kind of competes. I had the good fortune during a bye week to watch him compete live. I think quarterbacks always drive where you go, and this guy is an incredible competitor. Very excited about him. At wide receiver, at a high school player, a JUCO player. Rio is actually a guy that led the nation in receptions as a junior college player out of Minneapolis. You'll see here in a minute he wears number 1. He's probably going to bring a lot of flashback to another number 1 that you'll see in our program, or you've seen in our program history. Offensive line has been a huge part. Kind of had, like I said, with Brandon, but then our last addition with AJ. AJ Dennis is a guy that was huge on our radar to begin. a couple times a year ago or almost 18 months ago, we thought we were going to get him. Really one of the first ones in on him. He came down to several visits. In early June, he took a visit to Michigan State, canceled his visit to us the next week. We were disappointed, but I distinctly remember having conversation with our staff, hey, let's take the high road. Never know how these come back. And then obviously Michigan State, with the transition they had there, opened up the door. He literally reached out to us, I think, within 48 hours of that transition. And he literally came here on the heels of back-to-back visits at Penn State and Clemson and committed to us the day after the Northwestern defeat, right? So in a strange kind of way, that day was the catapult to where we are today. Also got a commitment that day from Daniel Brown, an outside linebacker that really flashes, led the nation in sacks in the junior college level. Again, another high school qualifier that probably was undersized, under-recruited, underdeveloped out of high school and has shown a lot of really good things. In the back end, we knew we were going to need help and got a couple high school players that we feel are going to be very, very prevalent and relevant for us. And the defensive line, I can't say enough about Coach Jamo, the recruiting staff targeting certain guys that really fit our MO and have brought them in. So we're not quite done. This world that we live in, right? I'm going to sign these players today, these 19 players. We're currently active in the portal world. We'll probably bring in another group of players that we'll announce as they come. And then, of course, we'll get a chance to announce them when they're here in January. But got good news today. I expect even better news this afternoon. So a lot of really good things happen in that regard and excited to get there. So a couple of people I want to thank, obviously my staff, the 10 coaches that can go on the road, spend a lot of time away from their families, a lot of time evaluating film, a lot of things above and beyond that I greatly appreciate for them. I had a returning staff of 6 guys and then brought 4 new guys in. I think those 4 new guys, Antonio, Charlie, Thad, and Dish, had immediate impact in our program and still to this moment that we're in right now. Those 4 guys have been invaluable, ingraining with the guys from the past. Pat Evelton and his crew. Pat's been here long before me. Just an incredible value for us as a football program for the university. For me, as not only a great co-worker, but a great friend, stands for everything that we love. And it's got a great feel for this university in ways that I can't even begin to understand, from academics to policies to procedures. Just a huge asset in his world. Nate McNeil, who's been a great addition for us since we've got here, has been an invaluable contributor. Pat Pearson, who came from kind of an outside source, had been with me in my past in communications and press, and his value to his program, his value for what I see, but also the things I don't see, incredible. Maya Green, who we brought with us after our first year. I was literally in a home visit last week, and this certain player had taken 4 visits within an 8-day window, and they weren't small visits. They were visits to 2 Big Ten schools, an ACC school and a Pac-10 school, and the mother literally said to me, I don't know who this Maya is, but she's incredible at what she does, right? And the detail of everything from the time we walk in the lobby to the time we have these players get on planes and travel around, her attention to detail is greatly appreciated and thankful for that. Jay Kaiser, who kind of heads up our portal world and our evaluations. Jay and I have been together since Kansas State days. He spent a lot of time in the NFL and incredibly valuable, tireless. I'll get a message from him at 1:30, 2:30 in the morning. Hey, just made an edit. It's waiting for you in your box. We kind of work opposite. He stays up late. I like to come in early and just we literally got on a young man that was in the portal a couple of days ago that had been in the portal for 3 minutes. And I was the first to reach out to him, right? And that stuff in today's world means a lot with these guys. Drake Leeper and then Houston Griffith, just those guys kind of on the day-to-day operation. Just can't say thank you enough. I know Josh is in here. Josh, Department of Athletics, what they allow us to do, the resources they give us, but also the ability to recruit this entire country, to be very specific in certain areas. The things that we're able to do because of the resources they give us has come back tenfold. So I really can't say enough. It's a great day to be here as a head coach, but I think it's just the beginning of really starting to turn the tide. You put together 3 classes in a row that I feel strongly about. Foundation, I knew there was going to be some landmines we had to navigate. Unfortunately, this year didn't get us to a bowl game, but I think this is another good step in the right direction to get us where we want to be. So with that, I'll open it up for some easy questions.
These 19 and then known additions from the portal, where do you stand scholarship-wise, or is there some wiggle room in February for the late signing period?
Well, as far as there's a new rule this year that was implemented last year during the COVID, where we can have 85 at any given time. So it's very important to note that our roster is a 120-man roster, 85 scholarship players. I know what that number is. I think our recruiting department, our coaches, but from the outside world, they don't, and that is something that we just kind of keep to ourselves. But we always have wiggle room.
13 guys coming at the semester. How big is that for you going forward?
Great question. Great point. It was funny. I did an interview this morning with Anthony Herron. If you guys watch or listen to the Big Ten channels, and Anthony's a regular, and this is a young man, literally one of the first kids I ever recruited from the state of Illinois, from Bolingbrook High School. And he made reference this morning. He said, "Coach, when you recruited me, and I believe it was 1995, probably 96, somewhere in there." He talked about how the players at that time connected with one another, right? Like he talked about there was 5 guys that I signed that I kind of connected those guys. We didn't have text messaging back then, but I connected those guys through emails and the functionality that we could at the time, just regular old phones that sat on a table, right? And I said, hey, today's world, I think the greatest recruiters we get are the guys that we sign, right? And when you have Brandon Hansen, he was our first commitment. He was emphatic about starting in January. And then he really catapulted that with every player he talked to after that. So now it's not just a coach saying, hey, we'd love to have you in January. It's a player saying, hey, if you come there in January, this is the benefits, right? And there's a whole, we can talk about for a half hour about the benefits of coming in January. They literally get to come here. They start classes without the pressure of a game week environment. They get to go 8 weeks and they go home for spring break. They get to go another 5 weeks of spring ball and get to go home for 3 weeks of May break. Then they come into an 8-week window and they get to go home 2 or 3 times in a matter of a 5 to 6 month window that allows them to kind of have the break of college transition. You drop a kid off in June, he may not go home until January, and that's when I think things get tough, right? So the ability and account all of that, in addition to those 13 guys will be through all of winter conditioning with Tank and our staff. They'll have they'll have an install during the winter, they'll have an install in the spring, and they'll have an install in the summer, and they'll have an install in Fort Camp. They'll have 4 installs before they hit the field. And the value of that, I think, even reflected this year when we saw the number of players that played for us, is huge.
So much talent in the trenches in this cycle, especially. Yeah. How do you feel through 3 years of how you're building those areas up? And what
it was kind of tough, especially on the defensive side. You had such premier players that it was kind of hard to backfill those with a portal guy, right? That he didn't want to come in with 2 years of eligibility and behind someone that has 2 years that's really good, right? So it's been a very tough challenge. JMO and I think our recruiting staff, so defensive line in particular, was very unique because of Johnny and Keith, as great as they were. And then you take a guy like Denzel Daxon, who last year literally was a part-time player at the college he came from in the MAC and became an elite player for us. He's already been invited to a Senior Bowl game. And so it was a tough challenge. I think like last year, some of our D linemen will play, some of them won't. I do expect, for sure, Demetrius and Angelo, I think, have shown me and Eddie that they've got the ability to come in and play early on, right? So I'm excited about that group. Offensive line-wise, we need some of our guys that have been here for 2 years in the program to have a really big spring. We'll add some portal offensive line in there that I think can come in and have an immediate impact into our program. But those 2 areas, in particular the offensive line this year for us, right, with a couple key injuries early in the season, was really hard. It was something that I knew it was there. I just didn't want it to come to circle. And then when the injuries came in, it really made it appear 10,000 times larger than I thought it was going to be. So that's a part that I've said to our staff all the way through. We can't be thin in the O-line and D-line again.
You've signed 2 players that haven't, from states that haven't produced a letterman since 1917 in Utah and Nebraska. Is there excitement that you have a staff that can go get anybody in the country if they're a good fit?
Yeah, great question. So Utah and where? Nebraska. 2 totally different stories. Easton was a guy that kind of popped up on our radar. I don't know exactly how it played out, but I remember Andy calling me and saying, hey, I like this. Would you watch the film? Watched him. Loved his energy, loved his attitude. We did a Zoom call with him and his family and just saw the family that was there and knew it would be a fit here. And Yeah, really excited about Easton. I think we obviously recruiting him. He's from Utah, but if you lived in Chicago, we would have recruited him too, right? So logistics is the dynamics that just a part of the process. And then Tanager really was coming. Ironically, he was going to come to camp. Unfortunately, didn't he pull his hamstring or something like that? He pulled his hamstring right before camp, so we didn't get him in. And Robbie just really liked the film, like where it is. It's 8-man football he's coming from, right? So he's going to have the experience of having 3 new guys on the field with him at one time. We're getting smaller and smaller. My first ever, I signed a guy by the name of Chad Greenway, played 9-man football out of South Dakota that ended up being a pretty good player. So I'm not afraid of the number of players they have on the field. And again, I think Tanner, he's a guy that if he was in Springfield, we would have. He's just that kind of kid. Mom and dad are both in education, tremendous upside, really a 3-way player. I think that's the thing that I love about Pat and our staff. We've been able to kind of go outside of our comfort zone and find guys that fit our program.
College kids, how did those kind of come to fruition? Were they pre-established relationships, or was it a late in the process kind of thing?
Great question. So the junior college guys all kind of had a unique story. I think the first one that we went after was Daniel Brown. So Daniel was at Hutch. We have Des Schuster, who's from Hutch, right? So Coach Dallas is a guy that I've known for a number of years. Hutch is literally year in and year out one of the best programs in the country. The coach that was there back when I was at Arkansas was one of my best friends, so I started going in Hutch and having experience. And we had a host of guys. I remember we sat down, we were watching literally like 6 or 7 guys on defense, and Daniel just started rushing the passer, and his skill set and his intensity, his demeanor. He led the nation in sacks for a reason. He's got really good explosive, quick hands, really body leans well. And then, so our first day in a bye week, I literally flew there on a Sunday and met with the coaches and physically saw, right, what he is. And I was like a little schoolgirl. I was just giddy, right? Like I just reached out to him that night, offered him a scholarship and just kind of kept. Then I got Charlie involved. Charlie loved his film, and he was literally the last player we went and saw. We went and hopped on a plane on Saturday night and flew to Kansas City and walked into a home with about 20 people that were full of love, great biscuit, great barbecue, mashed potatoes, you name it, we had it. I could have stayed another 2 hours. But DB was that way. The next guy was probably, that same week I went into Iowa Central and I'd been in several Kansas JCs, a couple of Iowa ones. Later in the week, I went over into Missouri and Mississippi. Went into Iowa Central. Coach was like, "Hey, you got a need for a wide receiver?" I said, "We're always kind of looking." I go, "We really won't need one unless our number one, if he goes out, I'd be looking for a slot receiver." He said, "I got one, right?" And I watched the film. Gio and I evaluated it. Gio went and watched him play live, and then Rio was just a guy that jumped out to us right away. So that was kind of a late edition find. We went in there for a couple of O-linemen. We were aware of him. I was going in to inquire about him. And then the last one, Chase Canada, we actually recruited his brother a year ago, became aware of Chase then. Didn't make a move. Probably should have made a move, right? He goes to Trinity and has an outstanding year, plays exceptionally well. We jumped on him, Coach Finellis, Coach Henry, myself, all of our staff, and he went and visited, I believe, Indiana and somebody else. Purdue came in, TCU came in, and he stiff-armed them at the very end and came our way. He actually went and visited Indiana after us, which I was actually confident, right? Like I said, hey, if you want to go see it, go see it. He called me literally on the visit and said, "It's what I want to do," and I'm very, very happy to get him on the line today.